Chapter 1: The Rift. The sky tore open like cloth set to flame. It began as a bruise at the edge of the night side, a purpled blemish haloed in dirty gold. Vox operators on the defense line of Desolation 9 mistook it for Aurora. The astropath in the basilica did not. She fell to her knees, blood threading from her eyes as if weeping ink, and whispered one word into the cold stone: hunger. On the plains below, among husks of manufactoria that had not worked in a century, Sergeant Cal Vorton of the 3rd Desolation PDF checked the seals on his rebreather, glanced at the new recruit beside him, and tried not to stare at the sky. The bruise flexed and widened. Lightning crawled through it like veins hunting for a heart. "Keep your eyes on the sector," Cal said. "The Emperor rewards vigilance." The recruit swallowed and nodded. They both looked at the sky anyway. On the other side of everything, a man who was not a man fell through colors that did not exist. Time thickened like old glass around him, distorting the shape of his memories. He remembered a laboratory on fire. He remembered a voice he trusted saying, "It's not your fault." He remembered the way love felt like a tether and rage like a door. He fell, and the thing within him woke. The green roar came first, familiar, molten, defiant, pushing against the pressure of a universe that was not his. But the space between spaces pressed back. In the warp there was no up, no down, only the attention of unkind infinities. They noticed him, a knot of fury, a singular, burning contradiction. They tasted the gamma fire braided through his cells and, curious, licked the edges of it like frost. Pain fed rage. Rage fed strength. Strength fed the attention he did not want. Something reached for him, a suggestion rather than a hand, shaped like a promise. It brushed the heat of him and crackled, recoiling, then crept closer again. The creature in the fall answered with a roar that had split tanks and mountains. The roar didn't echo, it multiplied, spiraling through the warp until it sounded like a choir of storms, then snapped into silence as gravity found him again. He punched through the sky. The world rushed up, a smear of rusted metal and black sand and broken roads. He hit a dead manufactorum roof, smashed through it, and cratered the concrete floor below. Dust became a cloud. Girders screamed. A kilometer away, a line of prefabricated habs shuddered as if shrugging off an old fear. In the center of the crater, something immense exhaled. "Contacts!" Someone yelled over the squad vox. Cal raised his field glass and saw the manufactorum folding in on itself, a building trying to pretend it had never been. The sky wound above it yawned and then peeled shut, like an eye deciding it had seen enough for now. Ash drifted in slow curtains. The air tasted metallic through the mask filter. "Form line," Cal said. "No discharges unless fired upon. We don't start fights we can't finish." "What if it starts the fight?" the recruit asked, voice small in the helmet. "Then we make sure it regrets the decision." He wished the joke felt true. He could hear his pulse, a river under stone. He could feel the floor's ache where he'd struck it. The building itself was a scream in slow motion. He braced a hand against the cracked slab and the slab moved. "Where am I?" The words arrived as a rumble, half thought, half growl. He felt wrong in his own skin, as if someone had snuck in and painted over the color of his fury. He looked down at his forearm, cords of muscle like ship cables, and saw darkness where there should have been green. Not gray. Not shadow. Black, deep as space between stars, swallowing light at the edges. The veins glowed, not with emerald fire, but with something colder, a cobalt pulse that made the hair on his arms bristle with memory of storms. He breathed. The breath came out as a cloud even though the air was warm. He tasted oil and dust and something sweet-rotten that made his neck itch. Banner. The name rose and dissolved. Other names followed it: Natasha, Betty, Ross, like leaves in a strong wind. Far away he could feel the smaller man pushing against the bars, a thought trying to become a shape again. The push always brought a kind of balance, a shared edge. Now the edge felt greased. He stood. The building objected. Rusted chains snapped like brittle twigs. The skeletal remains of a conveyor line toppled. He reached to steady himself and accidentally uprooted a column. It tore free with a squeal, showering sparks. The darkness of his skin drank the sparks and gave nothing back. Outside, something metal coughed to life. Engines, many. He turned toward the sound. Cal's chimera sputtered to a halt with a cough and a hiss. The driver swore, hit the console once with the heel of his hand, and the machine consented to continue. The squad rattled forward through a forest of slag and beams, the manufactorum ahead throwing out dust like a volcano that had forgotten how to be proud. "Sergeant, Auspex shows a single bio sign," Voxman Rill said. "Mass reading. That can't be right. Report anyway. Mass a variable. Sir, it's like the ground keeps recalculating." Rill swallowed. Size of a dreadnought. Maybe bigger. Cal checked the charge in his lasgun, knowing it would matter about as much as spitting at rain. The Chimera's hatch groaned open. Heat rolled in, thick and sour. They fanned out, boots crunching glass, eyes searching the gloom. Light slashed the dust. A shadow on the far wall moved, and then the wall itself decided it had fulfilled its purpose and collapsed outward. Something stepped through. Cal had seen abhumans. He'd even seen an orc up close once, on a deployment he still dreamed about when he drank too much. This was not that. This thing had a shape like a man because a mountain has a shape like a hill. Technically true, spiritually misleading. It was taller than the Chimera and broader than the door it had made. Its skin was, Cal's mind wanted to say dark, the tidy word soldiers used for night and blood-slicked armor, but that would have been a different kind of truth. This was blackness like the absence of witness, like a wound in light. Strange veins pulsed beneath the surface, blue-white, like rivers under ice. Its eyes were an argument between colors. Green warred with electric blue across the irises, and where they met there was a razor's glint. It looked at the Chimera as a bull might look at a fence and then past it, as if measuring the horizon for something to fight big enough to be worth the effort. "Hold," Cal said softly, nearly to himself. "Hold your fire." The thing's nostrils flared. It sniffed the air with an expression that hovered between curiosity and contempt, then twitched as though a pain had laced through its skull. "Who sent you?" Cal asked, surprising himself with how calm he sounded. "Identify yourself." The giant's jaw worked. The sound that came out was half boulder, half thunder. "No." It seemed to taste the word. "No one." It took another breath, deeper, like filling bellows. Something in the rafters rattled. Cal felt that breath in his ribcage. "We're the Planetary Defense Force," Cal said. "This is Imperial territory. You're under." The sky interrupted him. Not tearing this time. Roaring. A crack like a god's knuckles rolled over the manufactorum as atmospheric craft punched through the cloud deck. The squad flinched. Cal didn't look up. He watched the not-man's eyes. They flicked skyward, and in that moment of distraction Cal saw what the astropath had felt earlier. A ripple of attention across invisible water, shapes circling beneath the surface of the giant's mind. They were curious. They were hungry. They were afraid of him. "Sergeant," Rill hissed. "Transmissions from command. Astartes en route. Thunderhawk inbound." So the rumors were true. The Sons of Gods on Desolation 9. Cal tried to imagine what the thing before him would look like with a space marine beside it. He decided not to. The giant's gaze dropped back to Cal. "Where am I?" it asked, the syllables chewed, thick, like it hadn't used a mouth in a long time. Cal swallowed his fear and answered with the only truth that mattered here. "In the Emperor's light." The thing frowned. The words rolled through it like stones in a river. It shook its head, the motion too large for the room, and dust cascaded. "Wrong," it said, softer. It looked around at the broken machines, the dead belts, the walls scabbed with old industry. The blue-white veins along its arms brightened, and for a moment Cal thought he saw images swim there like trapped lightning. A green-eyed man, a woman with red hair, a horizon that was not made of ash. "Wrong," it repeated, and the wrongness of the place seemed to answer. A resonance that made teeth ache. "Contact!" Someone shouted from the perimeter. "Movement on the east approach." Cal tore his gaze away and saw figures slipping through the bones of the manufactorum. Lean, quick shapes in armor that reflected light like oil. Not the slow thunder of Astartes. These were something else. Their helmets were beaked and cruel, their rifles sleek like serpents. Their movements were dance and knife. The air around them hummed as if tuned. Xenos. Not the kind Command had trained them for. Not the kind Command had trained anyone for on Desolation 9. A shot lanced out, a line of light with a barbed thought at the end. It hissed past the giant and tore a hole in the wall behind him, heat rippling like a mirage. The giant turned toward the shot with an animal clarity that Cal recognized in the way men looked at food after a siege. The nearest of the sleek Xenos tilted its head as if studying a specimen. The voice that drifted out, translated by some malign courtesy, was amused. "Oh," it said. "What a delightful mistake." The giant didn't wait for introductions. It moved. It was not graceful. Grace implies negotiation with space. The giant negotiated with violence. It took 2 steps and crossed a distance that had looked like 50 meters a heartbeat before. Its hand came down like a verdict. The Xeno skipped aside, almost bored, boot magnets biting a beam as it twisted and brought the rifle up, and the giant's fist hit steel instead, turning the beam into fragments that pinged and whined around the squad. Cal's men opened fire. Red lances clawed the dust. The Xenos flowed through it, arrogant economy in every step, returning needles of light that cut through flak like paper. Rill went down with a cooked hole in his shoulder. The recruit fired and kept firing until the cell sang dry, mouth open in a wordless prayer, then fumbled for a new pack with shaking hands. The giant absorbed a fusillade meant for Cal without seeming to notice. The shot struck that black skin, sank, and vanished like coins thrown into deep water. The blue-white veins flared. The giant inhaled sharply, startled, as if some part of him had just discovered fire again. He roared. The roar stopped hearts for a beat. It found an old pipe above and shattered it. Steam howled into the air. The Xenos faltered. The giant grabbed the nearest one by the leg mid-leap and used it to break the floor, then flung the crumpled armor into a wall hard enough to draw an outline. "Back!" Cal yelled to his men, because some battles are fought by saints and monsters, and a sergeant's job is to make sure there are witnesses alive to write the report. He dragged Rill behind a fallen slab and pressed a coagulant patch into the smoking wound. Rill bit down on his own glove and screamed only once. Above them, engines grew from thunder to presence. The Manufactorum shadows shifted as a vast shape blockaded the light. A Thunderhawk, gunship of the Adeptus Astartes, hallowed by oil and oaths older than any man in Cal's squad. Its cannons tracked, patient, as if consulting a catechism before deciding which sin to punish first. The giant looked up again. Something passed across his face that was not rage. It wasn't fear either. It was recognition of a kindred simplicity. Here was a thing built to break. He understood that. The Thunderhawk's Vox barked a warning in a voice that sounded like war had learned how to speak. "All planetary forces, disengage. Fire lanes are mine." The sleek Xenos melted from sight as if the announcement bored them. A moment later they were gone, like a bad thought leaving. Cal's throat had gone dry. He found he was smiling in spite of himself. He had called for gods, and the gods had answered. Then the Astropatha's voice, thin, distant, transmitted without permission, touched every skull that could hear. "Do not let it be named," she whispered, and the words scraped the bones like a cold wind. "Do not bind it with names. It notices." The giant frowned again, as if hearing something only it understood. The blue-white in his veins surged, met the green in his eyes, and for a heartbeat both colors were there in equal share. Cal saw the man inside pushing, pleading, like a swimmer fighting a dark tide. "Banner," the giant said, as if testing the weight of the name on his tongue. The name cut him. The dark veins flared brighter, then dimmed, as if some deep engine had throttled down to avoid a stall. He steadied himself with a hand on the broken floor. The floor said a new definition of broken. The Thunderhawk's cannons settled on him like a benediction denied. Its voice returned, cool as a blade in water. "Unknown bioform. This is Imperial territory under the guardianship of the Adeptus Astartes. You will submit to containment for the protection of mankind." The giant looked from the gunship to the squad and back again. He breathed once, twice. The The third breath came out like a laugh that had forgotten how to be happy. "Try," he said. The Thunderhawk fired, and the world turned white. Chapter 2: The Black Awakening. The Manufactorum vanished in a sheet of light. Twin-linked cannons turned the air into a solid wall of heat. Concrete boiled. Iron screamed into vapor. The first volley hammered the crater where the giant stood and kept hammering until even echoes had nowhere to live. Cal tasted static through his mask. The blast shoved him into the slab shielding Rill. Dust and ash crawled into the seals like fingers. Somewhere to his left the recruit was praying again, voice shredded and small. The light thinned. The roar receded into a bass thrum that made teeth hum. In the middle of a smoking bowl, the giant was still there. He was kneeling, one fist braced to the floor, head bowed. Black skin smoked without burning. Where the cannon strikes had hit hardest, the blue-white veins had brightened until they looked like cracks in obsidian, light forcing its way out from underneath. Shards of molten steel lay fused to his shoulders like fallen meteors. He exhaled and vapor curled around his jaw. The Thunderhawk slid sideways, engines feathering, targeting cogitators recalculating a problem that refused to be solved the normal way. Its ramp thumped down. They came out like a sermon. Black armor. White crosses. Chains wrapped like oaths. The first wore a tabard stained with oil and age and had a sword as long as a man strapped to his back. His helm's vox grill was a stylized skull. A rosarius glimmered at his throat. A chaplain followed, Crozius Arcanum held as if it weighed nothing. Vox amplified litanies already beginning to grind the air into discipline. A third strode heavy with a power fist the size of a coffin lid, lightning clawing along the knuckles. They moved with the inevitability of a tide. Black Templars, Cal thought, and even his fear made room for wonder. By the will of the High Marshal, the chaplain's voice rolled. By oath and blade, the Emperor's law is here. The kneeling giant lifted his head. For a moment something like a man looked out. Green eyes, tired and furious at once. Then the veins flared again, a cold blue, and a second expression slid under the first like a shadow at noon. The pupils tightened to points. The jaw set in a shape that did not compromise. "Target," the sword brother said, flat. He lifted a hand. "Advance." They came on in a wedge, bolters at low ready. The chaplain's litanies deepened, rhythm steady as a heart. "Hatred is the chain that binds the blade," he intoned. "Faith is the fire that tempers it." The giant stood. "Stand down," he rumbled back, the words dragged across gravel. "Don't want," he grimaced, "to break you." The sword brother's finger flexed. 10 bolters spoke in unison. The rounds, mass reactive, adamantine core, punched and bloomed against the giant's chest and shoulders, chewing shards from the world around him. He staggered half a step. Blue-white veins flared blindingly. The rounds vanished into the black as if swallowed. His face twisted, not with pain but with offense. "Enough," he said, and it wasn't a plea. He moved. Power armor is fast in the hands of those who have lived in it for centuries. The giant was faster in a way that offended physics. He closed on the wedge, grabbed the lead Marine by the pauldron, and lifted. The Templar weighed more than a small car. It didn't matter. The giant turned and used him like a battering ram against his brother to the right, folding ceramite and throwing both through a half-collapsed wall in a cascade of brick and rust. The power fist came in from the left, a haymaker loaded with the wrath of a dying star. It hit the giant under the ribs. The impact made a noise like an anvil falling into the sea. The giant slid 2 meters, boots plowing furrows. He looked down at the fist, then up at the helm behind it, not angry exactly but as if disappointed in an old friend, and head but the Marine. Helm met bone. The helm lost. Plasteel spiderwebbed and the Templar went to a knee, dazed. Chain's words screamed to life. A blade bit into the giant's forearm, its toothy prayer chewing for purchase. Sparks geysered. The blade broke. The chaplain stepped into the pocket of violence, Crozius arcing. The mace struck the giant across the collarbone. A corona of caged light flared and there was the stink of ozone. The giant's head snapped sideways. He blinked once, twice. "Back," the chaplain snapped to his brothers, reading an enemy that refused to be categorized. test, probe, find its limit. Somewhere behind his own eyes, Bruce Banner pressed his palms to a glass that wasn't there. Stop. Listen to them. Coordinate. Think. The dark refused him. It flowed back over his thought like oil on water, sealing the cracks, swallowing the light. No, the other thing said. The voice was not words. It was shape and weight. It was the feeling of your foot finding the floor in the dark. No, we are not prey here. You're different, Bruce thought, clear for a heartbeat. Something changed you. The warp. The storm. The veins lit again, and for an instant the blue was not cold. It was hungry. The Black Hulk, because the name would be given whether the astropath wished it or not. Things given shape cannot help collecting words. Caught the chaplain's crozius on his forearm and didn't flinch. The caged power crawled across his skin like lightning on glass, seeking ground. It found none. He twisted. The chaplain let the weapon go rather than be dragged out of stance and struck for the giant's throat with his free gauntlet. The Rosarius flared as if eager. By the throne, the chaplain growled. Yield. Make me, the Black Hulk said, and there was joy in it now, a dark, clean joy like a storm deciding where to fall. A las cannon fired from the Thunderhawk, a single precise beam that would have cored a tank. The beam hit the Black Hulk's spine and poured in. Instead of punching through, the light slowed, bent. The black drank it. Blue-white veins bulged bright as rivers in flood. The giant straightened as if a weight had come off him, turned and exhaled. The breath was a shockwave. It wasn't wind. It was pressure reset. The floor bucked. Marines were shoved a step despite mag-locked boots. The Thunderhawk's targeting cogitators hiccuped, losing lock for a breath, then found it again with mechanical stubbornness. New protocol, voxed the Sword Brother. Calm even with his ribs complaining and half his wedge scattered. Treat it as a psyker hostile. Chaplain sanctified shells. Already begun, the chaplain said, and his litany sharpened. Names of saints and martyrs knitting into a net. Purity seals on armor edges fluttered as if caught in a wind none of them could feel. On the ridge above, the astropath bled and smiled through it. It is not a psyker, she croaked to no one kind enough to answer. It is a hunger in a shape. Cal, crouched with Rill, watched and learned the shape of futility. His men were ants at the edge of a god fight. He pointed them at tasks that were true even here. Drag the wounded to cover, mark fields of fire, do not waste shots or courage. And they did them because men like Cal told them to. The Xenos who had fired first did not come back. They had tasted the board and decided this game was not theirs today. The Thunderhawk vector shifted, engines howling as it made a slow, patient circle. Over the squad vox came a secondary channel Cal had never been meant to hear. Command, the occasional tight gulp of inquisitorial code, a word, containment. Dreadnought inbound, someone on that channel said. Voice level in the way of people for whom disbelief is a sin. The Black Hulk tore a pillar out of the floor and used it like a club. The Sword Brother let it go past and cut in at the knee joint with his chainsword, a precise surgical strike that would have undone a demonette at dance. The blade hit, chewed a notch and stalled. The Black Hulk swatted him with the return, sending him end over end into a stack of crushed hab frames. He got up, because he was a Black Templar and that is what they do. The chaplain fainted high and went low, crozius crackling back into his hand. He had caught it on the rebound without looking and struck for the ankle. The shock shattered concrete under the blow. The Black Hulk's leg twitched. It was as much success as anyone had managed. The Thunderhawk's vox boomed, "Make space." They did, with marine efficiency, peeling back, covering one another, creating a channel through wreckage. The drop pod hit like an answer to a question no one had the nerve to ask out loud. Runes flared and died. Door pedals blew, pistons screaming. The thing that strode out wore a sarcophagus engraved with a life's worth of wars and a frame like a cathedral given legs. Twin-linked autocannons mounted on one arm spun up with a predator's purr. The other arm ended in a power claw that crackled blue, hungry for penance. Ancient Vardek, the chaplain voxed, reverence and urgency braided. A creature of blasphemous endurance. We need it halted. The dreadnought turned its ancient eye lenses toward the Black Hulk and made a sound like a landquake clearing its throat. Then let it learn stillness. The autocannons barked. Heavy shells hammered the Black Hulk's chest and shoulder in a steady rhythm. Not the surgical bursts of the earlier assault, but an industrial litany. Remove, reduce, refuse. He staggered under the mass of the onslaught, took a step that cracked the floor, braced. Fragments of something. Old chain, a bent girder, spun away from him, shredded. He roared and charged. The dreadnought met him as an avalanche meets a flood. The power claw swung. The Black Hulk ducked under it, grabbed the dread's forearm and pushed. Floor plates tore. The dreadnought dug in with anchor spikes, servos screaming in protest. Sparks showered. The chaplain and sword brother closed, looking to carve tendon and lever joint. Even if the enemy had neither in the right place, habit made truth. For a breath, the fight was a statue of force. Inside the sarcophagus, ancient Vardek remembered dying a long time ago under a sky that smelled like iron and victory. He remembered the brothers who had sung him awake in a box of wires and prayer. He remembered never yielding. He poured that memory into the claw and squeezed. The power field bit the Black Hulk's shoulder. Here at last was something that had teeth in the right dimension. Blue-white veins flared as the field skittered and bit again, seeking not flesh but the spaces between atoms. The Black Hulk bellowed in real pain, the sound raw and surprised. He wrenched. The dreadnought slid a meter, Anchor's trenches tearing longer furrows. The autocannons depressed at point blank and pounded his ribs, then his face, plates slamming into him like fists the size of shields. He spat metal. Banner clawed at the glass again. The warp's cold fingers pressed the other way, steadying. Listen, it whispered without words. Hear the choir that hates you. Take it in. Make it yours. No, Banner thought, fiercely, and for a ragged second the green came back, bright as spring in an ash field. The Black Hulk's eyes flashed emerald. His grip slackened a fraction. The dreadnought's claw bit deeper, power field whining as it found purchase, and the chaplain's crozius cracked across the Black Hulk's knee. He dropped onto one leg with a grunt. The whisper cooled. The blue returned like night flowing back into a valley. The veins surged. The power field faltered, just perceptibly, starved not of current but of the kind of resistance it understands. The Black Hulk's flesh wasn't flesh. It was a problem pretending to be solved. He drove his forehead into the dreadnought's sarcophagus. Once. Twice. On the third, a saint's reliquary riveted to the casing fractured with a sad little sound. Vardek grunted, more affronted than injured. His claw raked, tearing furrows across the Black Hulk's back that closed as they were made. Blue light knitting the dark. Containment, the command channel said again, louder, as if volume were doctrine. Inquisitorial asset inbound. Gamma class anomaly. Repeat, Gamma class. The word meant nothing to Cal. It meant something to the Black Hulk. He froze for half a breath at the taste of it. Gamma. Old syllable. Familiar. The pause cost him a step. The dreadnought pushed, the chaplain struck. The sword brother's blade found the notch it had cut earlier and cut deeper. Something broke, soundless, because sounds have limits. It wasn't bone. It was a shape of balance. The Black Hulk pitched forward, catching himself on knuckles that left craters. He laughed. It was a terrible sound. Not cruel. Cruelty is measured, a line between choice and result. This was the laugh of weather. Good, he said, grinning blood that looked black. Try. The Thunderhawk descended another meter, cannons tracking, ready to clip wings if the thing thought to fly. Its belly hatch cycled. A robed figure stepped to the edge, sigils of the Inquisition hanging like knives, a mask with no mouth reflecting the wreck. Servo skulls whirred around him like pet carrion. By my mandate, the Inquisitor's vox-cut voice sliced. This entity is to be seized, studied, and, if necessary, scoured. Deploy stasis web. Electro-harpoons snapped from the Thunderhawk's undercarriage. Trailing coils. They struck the Black Hulk's torso and thighs, burrowing anchors that bloomed metal hooks. Power surged. A lattice of crackling force stitched itself around him, a net woven from rules. It cinched. The Black Hulk arched as the web tightened. The blue-white veins flashed bright as midday. The net hummed higher, searching for harmony. For a breath, he hung there, pinned between cathedral and storm, breath hissing, teeth bared. "Hold," the Inquisitor commanded. Banner took the moment like a gift. "Bruce, remember. Count. Breathe. Stand down." The dark laughed again, softer now, almost fond. "Not yet." The Black Hulk bent his arms. Muscles swelled like tides under a black moon. The web stretched. The Thunderhawk's winch readouts climbed through yellow toward red. Anchors gouged tracks across the floor, tearing free a line of old machine foundations. The stasis field flickered once, recovered. "More power," the Inquisitor snapped. Already at safe threshold, the gunship's pilot returned, voice tight. "Past that, we fry our own cogitators and drop the load." "Do it." The pitch rose. Cal's Vox cut to white noise for a heartbeat. The web glared incandescent, bathing the scene in a cold radiance that cast no warmth. The Black Hulk roared, not angry now but intent. He pulled. The winches locked. The floor stopped being a floor and became debris. The web's lattice lines bowed like harp strings. One snapped. Light cracked the air like a whip. Another snapped. The field cascaded into failure. Patches of nothing skating across his skin and sliding off like rain. He dropped from the net, hit the floor in a crouch, and came up in the same motion, eyes like twin reactors under ice. The Inquisitor was already moving. Hand-cutting sigils, servoskulls spitting arcs that made normal men vomit from the taste alone. The chaplain surged with a shout that was half prayer, half battle joy. The dreadnought advanced, claw open for an embrace that meant an ending. The Black Hulk met them all. He didn't dance with the force that took him. He wore it like a cloak and made it fit. And in the ridgetop basilica, the astropath slumped against the cold stone, the last of her nosebleed drying in black streaks. "It wakes," she whispered to the quiet saint in the niche, who looked away out of mercy. "Not the green. The other. It has learned how to be itself here." Below, the black veins pulsed in a steady rhythm now, no longer flaring only at insult but moving with a terrible, calm confidence, as if they had found a key. The Black Hulk smiled without kindness. "Round 2, he said, and stepped into the fire. Chapter 3, Contact with the Imperium. The second round didn't start with a charge. It started with a choice. Smoke boiled through the manufactorum's open ribs, hiding and revealing war like a magician who refused to end the trick. The Black Hulk stood in the crater he'd made and rolled his shoulders as if loosening a cloak. The blue-white glow under his skin steadied into a pulse. Synchronized. Heart. Breath. Something older. The Astartes formed a line that wasn't a line. 2 points of pressure. Chaplain, sword brother, anchoring the flanks while the dreadnought advanced like a moving wall. Above them, the Inquisitor recalculated the world. Failing stasis web, droned a skull. Winches compromised. Lattice collapse predicted at, it hesitated, then wisely stopped predicting. Plan B, the Inquisitor said, calm as a knife. Sanctioned null assets. Bring them forward. Negative, the Thunderhawk pilot replied. No nulls on this world. Closest sister's contingent is 3 jumps. The Inquisitor's mask tilted, a gesture that might have meant irritation under there. Then we borrow other tools. Cal Vorton didn't have tools. He had a squad and stubbornness. He had Rill bleeding through a dressing and the recruit still alive because Cal kept putting him behind something heavier than his bones. He also had eyes, and they told him the Astartes were learning in real time the way men in black armor always did, through application of faith and violence until the problem turned into parts. The Black Hulk chose first, toward the dreadnought. He didn't sprint. He walked, an ugly, deliberate thing, absorbing bolter fire that would have made a Lehman Russ rethink its life choices. He let the rounds hit, drank their heat, and didn't let the heat go. The blue glow brightened and stayed bright. He angled to the dread's right, baiting the claw, then stepped inside its arc and put both hands under the sarcophagus as if he meant to lift a planet. Ancient Vardek obliged by being unliftable. Anchor spikes dug, engines howled, pistons locked. The dreadnought would sooner tear the ground up and wear it like a skirt than be moved. It sank into the floor a hand's breadth, and did not fall. The chaplain cut in with a 2-step lunge, Crozius cracking at the Black Hulk's temple. The blow should have felt like memory loss. The giant flinched, snarled, released, and pivoted, driving a knee into the dread's hip assembly that made a sound like a bell remembering its purpose. The sword brother saw it. Joint there, he voxed curt. Right hip. He's testing it. Deny angles, the chaplain answered, already moving to do exactly that. The Thunderhawk raked the far end of the manufactorum with heavy bolter fire, not at the Black Hulk but at shadows. Something slick and elegant slipped away through girders. Another alien eye losing interest. The Inquisitor's servoskulls fanned, sniffing trace warp burn like bloodhounds without love. Muggos. The Inquisitor voxed on a tight beam to a voice that hadn't yet spoken. You are watching? Yes, answered a tone like chimes dipped in oil. Cogitators observe, record, and fail to classify. The energy signatures do not correspond to known Xenos biopatterns or arch-Hertech constructs. It is a corrupted constant. A what? A human thing rewritten, the Muggo said, pleased by strange. Gamma origin, perhaps. Fascinating. Find me a way to stop it that does not require killing my gunship. Your gunship is an acceptable loss if the result advances knowledge. Muggos. A disclaimer word. Understood. Suggestion. Grav inversion at localized vector. Not a full lift. A stumble. Do it. The Black Hulk felt the floor misbehave. It wasn't a trapdoor or a pit. It was weight arguing with itself. For a heartbeat, his stomach rose as if on a fast descent, and his next step hit a floor that wasn't quite there yet. He dipped. The Dreadnought's claw took the invitation, seizing his bicep. Power fields screeched as they looked for something to ruin and finally found a purchase that promised regret. Pain cut clear for the first time since the cannons. Banner shoved through the gap. Stop. If you keep going, they'll. The blue sank its teeth. They'll break. He twisted the trapped arm, turned into the torque, took the pressure on thickened tendon and bone that didn't accept normal definitions. The claw bit. The blue flared. The bite became a kiss of static. He hit the Dreadnought's torso with the heel of his free hand. The sarcophagus rang. Saints rattled. Ancient Vardek weathered it, then answered with a backhanded sweep. The blow threw the Black Hulk through a tangle of conveyor and chain. He rolled, came up, grinning a grin without intentions beyond the next impact. Again, the chaplain murmured, and it might have been prayer or command, and here those were the same. They obliged each other. The Inquisitor watched the pattern emerge. Strike, absorb, feed, return. The thing metabolized insult. The stasis web had failed not because the lattice lacked power, but because the lattice expected the world to hold still and the world refused. Ground him, the Inquisitor said to the pilot. Smoke. Chaff. Blind his senses and see which ones he uses. Smoke bloomed. Cal threw up a hand on instinct that helped exactly no one. The world turned grainy. Through the hazed light, the Black Hulk moved like a memory that refused to be forgotten. His outline fanned, then sharpened like a weapon in a whetstone's arc. Thermals? Asked the Inquisitor. Negative, said a skull. Body emits in nonlinear bands. Data useless. Audio. The skull listened. Boom. 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 Not the cannons, not the engines. A pulse. The Black Hulk's footfalls synced to it now, not because he needed rhythm but because rhythm needed him. The chaplain's litanies tried to pull the air back into their meter. For a moment the two patterns clashed, then braided, then clashed again. Cal realized he was smiling and made it stop. Madness came in flavors. This was the kind that tasted like awe. Sergeant. The recruit crawled to him, eyes too wide. Orders. Live, Cal said. Be where the dying aren't. Drag anyone you can reach. If something looks at you like it recognizes you, shoot it. The recruit blinked. What? You'll know it if it happens. The chaplain made the sign of the Aquila, stepped through smoke, and found the giant waiting for him. They traded blows that no human eye could fairly count. The Crozia sparked and sang. The giant's forearm blocked, shuddered, pushed. The sword brother slid in and tried the hip again. The giant anticipated, shifted weight, and the chain's word ate nothing but sparks. Vardek advanced, claw chewing the air, autocannons pounding when the line opened. One round finally bit something soft, if the word soft could be applied to the Black Hulk at all, tearing a thumb-width groove across his ribs. Blue light spilled like coolant and steamed in the air. The wound closed like an idea that never happened. Impossible, Rill whispered around his pain. No, Cal said. Just happening. The Inquisitor's patience wore out on a schedule only he could read. Orbital, he said on a channel Cal would never know existed. Low Lance. Surgical. Authorization INQ Theta 7. A voice old as the void and bored with planets answered from above the cloud layer. Deny. Asset priority revised. Ordo Xenos wants it unatomized. Ordo Xenos can, the Inquisitor stopped, then smoothed the sentence. File an addendum. This is Ordo Hereticus business while it breathes in Imperial air. Your writ competes at altitude, said the void voice, and politely closed the channel. The Inquisitor stared at the clouds, then back at the fight, and filed revenge for later. Muggos. New plan. The Muggos didn't love words like new outside of specific ritual contexts. But problems were altars, and solutions were offerings. I have something, they said, servos clicking. A sonic. Aggressive. Human-friendly. Theoretically. Do it. A coil rose from the Thunderhawk's belly, an ugly trumpet rifled with veins. The air in front of it trembled. Cal felt the hair on his forearms pull like grass toward a coming storm. Rill's teeth ached so hard he clapped a hand to his mouth and made a sound like a kicked kettle. The recruit curled, helmeted head on his knees, trying to fold around a frequency. The Black Hulk paused. It wasn't pain. It was distraction. The frequency wasn't a knife. It was a suggestion. It aimed not at his nerves but at the way his body decided where his nerves should be. The blue-white light stuttered. His next breath hit a gear that didn't quite want to notch. Banner surged. No. Listen. Stop. The Black Hulk blinked. For a heartbeat he saw the chaplain, not as an enemy, but as a man whose bones would break if he struck them the same way again. He could choose. He could. The Sonic climbed a half step in a scale no human choir would survive. The choice blurred. The floor tilted the wrong way. The Dreadnought's claw closed and found the bicep again, and this time it slid 1 centimeter deeper than before. The Black Hulk snarled, shook his head like a dog clearing water, and ripped free. Blue light spiked, angry at being told what rhythm to keep. He seized a slab of floor and flung it at the Thunderhawk. The slab never arrived. Twin cannons cut it to sand mid-flight. The sand blew back, a glitter storm. The coil whined and held. Effective, the Muggos noted. Curious feedback. It is rewriting its own harmonics around the tone. Turn it up, the Inquisitor said. Past this, human tissue ruptures. The Inquisitor looked at the PDF cluster behind their slab and at the Astartes under the trumpet's shadow. They will endure. Cal's Vox coughed and died. His vision tunneled. He didn't hear the coil rise. He felt it as a pressure in his joints that wanted to argue with the way his fingers fit together. The recruit vomited, a mercifully contained sound. Rill bit through the glove. The chaplain took a step as if through mud. His Rosarius flared. The sword brother grunted and pushed past a wobble in his servo's feedback, the kind that killed men who trusted machines too well. Ancient Vardek, wrapped in adamantium and old pain, didn't care about sound made hateful. He cared about now. The Black Hulk did care. His world shuddered. The blue went dimmer, then brighter. Dimmer. Brighter. A strobe of self. Banner pressed his palms to the ghost glass and this time it flexed. Bruce, he said to himself with his own voice, a miracle in the noise. Bruce. Count. Breathe. Yield. The Black Hulk's chest hitched. His hands opened. The chaplain saw it, hope like a hinge moving just enough to fit a door. Hold, he called, and the word had weight. The sword brother stopped his blade a hair from the knee. Even the dreadnought slowed the claw, pressure easing by degrees measured with reverence. The coil sang. Stop, the Inquisitor said to the pilot. What? But the field. Stop, the Inquisitor repeated, pleasant as poison. New test. The coil fell silent. The world rushed back into shape, full of ragged breaths and tiny human noises that sounded suddenly precious because they were possible again. The Black Hulk stood, head bowed, shoulders heaving. The blue settled, weak as lightning at the end of a long storm. The chaplain lowered his crozius, voice softened by the mercy he'd been taught to weaponize. "Hear me, creature. Yield. There is a man inside you. We will find him a cage that does not hate him." The giant lifted his head. Green burned in his eyes now, cutting through the glacial blue. For the first time, when he spoke, it sounded like a man dragged up from deep water, coughing, furious at his own lungs for needing air. "Stop hurting them," Bruce Banner said. The chaplain didn't move. "Then kneel." Banner looked at the dreadnought's claw, at the sword brother's poised blade, at the Inquisitor above like a patient executioner. He looked past them at the slab where Cal crouched with his men. He saw Rill's red bandage and the recruit's shaking hands. He closed his eyes. The blue inside him shifted, irritated, like a predator who'd been called off a chase it wanted to finish. Banner started to kneel. The Inquisitor moved faster than mercy. "Bind it," he snapped. "Muzzle and chain. Trank darts all." The Thunderhawk popped ports along its belly. Needles hissed down, a storm of silver wasps. The chaplain swore, a word that tasted ancient and honest. He threw himself between the dartfall and the kneeling giant, Rosarius flaring a dome that turned half the swarm aside. Enough got through. Needles kissed the Black Hulk's neck and shoulder and thigh. Alchemical payloads went looking for blood. Banner's mouth opened. "Wait." The blue smiled and sank its teeth in again. Tranquilizers that slept Ogrins burst into blue fire under his skin, cracking into harmless ash. The kneel became a lunge. The chaplain took the impact on his crozius, boots skidding. The sword brother caught himself from cutting the knee on reflex and instead rammed a shoulder into the Black Hulk's hip, trying to bring him down with mass where blades failed. "Heretic!" The Inquisitor thundered at the chaplain, rage riding the vox like a spear. "You interposed. Your order endangered compliance," the chaplain snapped back. He was yielding. He was pretending. It is what abominations do. The dreadnought's claw closed on air as the Black Hulk spun out of the trap with a brutality too efficient to be called grace. He wasn't laughing now. His face had settled into something colder. Disappointment sharpened into intent. Banner pounded at the glass until his palms bled, and then the glass wasn't there anymore. Far away and very near, the warp watched, nose pressed to the window of reality, delighted and annoyed. Things that were not gods and also were whispered names at one another. A way of placing bets. Something else, older, quieter, didn't whisper. It leaned. On the cathedral ridge, the astropath felt that lean like a finger across the strings of her mind. She looked up through the basilica's shattered ribs and saw ships she couldn't see, heard choirs she couldn't hear. "Don't," she told the sky, and smiled because telling gods anything was comedy, and comedy was mercy. A shadow fell across her. Not a human shadow. Armor that made no sound, a helm with no face, a presence that turned the air flat. A null. "Late," the astropath said, and didn't bother to look at the woman. Looking hurt nothingness the way looking hurts light. "Summoned," the Sister of Silence replied without voice, because blanks didn't waste the luxury of sound. She looked down at the manufactorum where a black giant and black-armored angels and a man with a letter for a crown made a new problem out of an old one. She lifted a hand. "Go faster," the astropath said, and the sister went. Below, the Black Hulk made a decision of his own. He could stay here and let the game be rigged by rules he didn't like. Or he could change the board. He bent, got both hands under the dreadnought's right hip where he'd felt the give. Ancient Vardek's claw came for his head. The chaplain's crozius came for his jaw. The sword brother's blade came for his knee. He took all three choices into the fact of his grip and lifted. The dreadnought left the floor. Not all of it. Anchor spikes tore. Plates screamed. For 2 heartbeats that were a century long, a sainted coffin and a cathedral of war rose far enough that the planet had to decide what to do about it. The Black Hulk decided for it. He pivoted, muscles like landslides, and slammed the dreadnought down into a wedge of collapsed tabs. Steel surrendered. Stone admitted mistakes. The impact shoved a wave through the floor that knocked men off feet and a gunship off its perfect hover for a blink. Vardek Systems went red, then amber, then red again. He replied by punching. The claw found the Black Hulk's jaw. The Crozius found his ribs. The Chainsword finally bit that notch and chewed. The Black Hulk roared into their faces, a sound with weight, and for a little while, the universe consisted only of 4 stubborn things arguing about which of them had the right to exist. Above, the Thunderhawk banked to compensate. The Inquisitor reached for another tool that would make someone write a report later, and across the ruined city a woman without a soul moved down broken steps like a winter coming early. Contact had been made. Peace had not. Chapter 4. The Purge Order. In the storm of dust and oath and engine howl, a new silence moved. It wore the shape of a woman in Baroque, rune-etched plate without the insult of purity seals. Purity was simply what she was. Her face was a smooth absence behind a visor of smoked glass. Where she walked, liturgies faltered in throats and stray thoughts snapped like stretched threads. Servoskulls bobbing near the Thunderhawk guttered and fell, their machine spirits mewling as if plunged into cold. A sister of silence stepped onto the manufactorum's fractured apron and the world forgot, moment by moment, how to sing. The chaplain felt it first, like a wind shouldering his litanies out of his lungs. He ground forward anyway, Crozius lifted, voice dropping to a ragged whisper on reflex. And then no more sound came, not for lack of faith but for lack of purchase. The Sword Brothers' Helmvox clicked static. Even the Dreadnought's hymn of servos lowered half a note, a cathedral's breath caught under snow. The Black Hulk felt it like the sea feels a sudden shelf, an absence that turned pressure into a cliff. The blue in his veins dimmed as if smothered under a hand. The old green flared in the brief vacuum, hot and furious, and then it too guttered, a candle slapped and cupped, sputtering uncertainly between colors. The sister's gauntlet lifted, palm outward. No words. She did not condescend to command. She merely approached, and the warp's curious, licking attention recoiled like a feral thing before a fire it respected. Null asset on field. The Inquisitor's skulls relayed to him with half their former cleverness. Silence radius increasing. Good, the Inquisitor said, and straightened to his full thin height at the Thunderhawk's lip. By the seal of the Ordo Hereticus, I proclaim. Stop proclaiming and fight, the chaplain voxed dryly on a channel that suddenly worked again only because it carried contempt, and contempt is heavy enough to exist even in a quiet. The Inquisitor's mask tilted, knife calm. He gestured. The manufactorum lit with new contrition. Grenadiers in flak and black-trimmed cloaks emerged from behind tank husks, their hands steady around canisters stamped with sigils that looked like mathematics grown vengeful. A second Thunderhawk, sleeker, a witch-hunter's blade, arrowed in above the first, its undercarriage compartment blooming with racks of phosphor-bright vials. Purge order, the Inquisitor breathed, a prayer, a verdict, a hobby. Anoint the air. The grenades went up in a swarm. They cracked in the high ruin with a choir of glass. A rain like crushed sunlight fell, rad dust, sanctified promethium aerosols, unguents brewed in prisons where the ingredients had once had names. The air turned sharp, sweet, and wrong. Cal Vorton's rebreather wailed a dirty warning. He rammed it tighter to his face and shouted without sound to the recruit, who had already curled under his cloak by instinct and terror. Rill lay still, eyes glass-bright, pulse rabbit-fast under Cal's fingers. The Black Hulk breathed once, only once, because breath is a reflex even for storms. It landed inside him like nails. Blue faltered, green burned. Then both were dragged across the sister's widening void like sparks stretched thin by wind. Muscles that had been engines stuttered. The world blunted. He blinked, slow, tiredness, an unfamiliar weight, creeping up the ropes of his spine with patient hands. The Dreadnought saw the half-beat of weakness and took it like a sacrament. The power claw speared forward, not for the bicep this time, but for the throat. The chaplain surged with him, Crozius sweeping low to sweep legs that did not deserve that word. The Sword Brother's teeth grated as he drove his blade into that notch at the knee, a craftsman returning to a question until it confessed. The Black Hulk yielded ground, flat-footed for the first time. He caught the claw two-handed. Field hissed. Sparks crawled over dark skin and went nowhere. He pivoted to spill the chaplain offline, and the chaplain refused to spill, corkscrewing the Crozius up to clip the jaw with a God's honest smack. Down! The sword brother thundered. No ritual now, only war. Press! The sister kept coming. Her presence was not a storm. It was the absence of one. The warp went out around her like a cathedral's candles pinched between finger and thumb. Where she stood, the blue in the Black Hulk's veins dimmed to threads, then to veins merely, then to nothing. Banner felt the glass in him vanish. There was no more window. There was only air. And air to a drowning man is a blade. He looked at her. For the first time since falling, fear, clean, human fear, touched his face. She stopped 3 paces away. She did not reach for him. She did not draw a blade. She looked at the monster with a soldier's simple assessment and then at the men trying to kill him, and her null field breathed outward like winter. Now, the Inquisitor said, mild and delighted. Now we sheathe it. Bind, the chaplain ordered, never taking his eyes from the Black Hulk's hands. No toxin unless I say. Chains. The sword brother slung his bolter. 2 Templars who had been buried in the Habrex clawed free, limping, and came in with sanctified adamant chains that had leashed demon hulks in colder wars. The dreadnought rotated its claw to pin rather than rend. The machine spirit offended and obedient at once. The chains clattered like a catechism around the Black Hulk's wrists. They should have weighed hope. They weighed memory instead, times he had knelt in labs and on decks, men shouting words like containment and stability. He set his jaw. Yield, the chaplain said, and in the sister's field the word was not a ritual. It was a fact. Bruce Banner tried. He stopped resisting the chain for 1 breath, then 2. On the 3rd, something ugly dawned in him. The understanding that the chain wasn't mercy. It was study. The sister's silence wasn't pity. It was a method. He could see the Inquisitor leaning over the Thunderhawk's lip like a boy over an anthill he had just discovered would burn beautifully. He could see the 2nd gunship's belly opening, pale needles sleeping in honeyed foam. He could see the Muggos below, head cocked, auspexes eager. He could hear, even hear, the recruit's ragged breath and Cal Vorton's deliberate ones. Banner made a choice that wasn't his usual. He lied. He let his knees touch cracked concrete. He bowed his head. He relaxed as much as a mountain relaxes. The chains tightened with happy little pings. The chaplain stepped closer, slow, Crozius lowered. Brother, he said, because he recognized fighting that hated itself. If there is a man in you, listen. The sister turned her visor a fraction, listening to nothing, measuring the shape of a soul's noise. Something in her stillness sharpened. We can carry you to a place where the pain is a job we know how to. Now, the Inquisitor said again, and the 2nd gunship's racks whirred, and something delicate and exquisite and utterly ungentle slid toward daylight. Banner lifted his eyes, and all at once the green inside him stopped being tired. It did not swell. It did not roar. It simply refused. Even in the null, refusal is an energy. The chain across his forearms creaked like a glacier shifting. The dreadnought's claw bit down, servos screaming in 3 harmonics at once. The sword brother braced. The chaplain's rosarius brightened as if a sun rose under a winter pond. The Black Hulk stood. The sister's field pressed. The blue light remained strangled to hairline traces, but the green burned in human defiance. He did not break the chains, not yet. He pulled the dreadnought a quarter step instead. It was enough to destabilize balance, not posture. The sword brother's boots rasped for purchase. The chaplain's Crozius rose, not to strike, but to interpose on instinct again. The Inquisitor laughed softly, almost kindly, as if at a child's trick that would crucially still end in a cage. More. The 2nd gunship sang its answer. 100 whisper-thin flechettes, psych-reactive, venom-laced, each carrying a microseal of hexagrammatic warding, hissed down like rain drawn by hate. They struck the sister's field and died with little popping noises, each one a prayer cut in half. They struck Templar plate and pinged, skittering. They struck the Black Hulk shoulders and face and neck and tried to rent real estate in a biology that didn't show up on the lease. Many bounced. Enough kissed skin. Wards tried to bite. The blue wasn't there for them to poison. The green ignored their hexes the way weather ignores paperwork. Their alchemies burned without finding a system worth sabotaging. But the sister's silence did not ignore anything. Her presence pressed the edges of him inward. Choice narrowed to a knife. He could not reach for the storm that had been so eager to be his spine. He could not eat the sting and call it fuel. So he did something else. He looked at the chaplain, square, steadfast, stupid in the most admirable way, and then at the sword brother, sharp-edged and loyal, precision taught to pray, and then at the dreadnought, who had once been a man named Vardek and had never stopped. "Move," he said, voice hoarse and human to the bone. "What?" The sword brother spat. "Move," Banner repeated, and there was a note in it old soldiers obey because they have heard it on fields where ranks are thin. The chaplain's eyes, somewhere in that skull-visored helm, narrowed. "Why?" "Because," Banner said, and he twisted his bound wrists under the dreadnought's claw, slipped the chain over the talons in a snare a sailor would have whistled at, and yanked. The claw bit its own chain. The dreadnought's pull locked on itself. Servos braced against their own stubbornness. The instant of mechanical confusion was beautiful and brief. Banner dove into it, shoulder first, turning his fall into momentum. He slammed into the chaplain, not to break him, but to move him, knocking the Crozius wide by a hair and the man a half-step to safety that he had not yet noticed he needed. The sword brother's blade came reflex fast. Banner took the cut on chain, sparks zolting across his forearms. He used the recoil to pivot, caught the chain under the dread's elbow joint housing, and heaved. The dreadnought pitched, not far, not enough. Just a stagger, the kind that opens a sight line. "Down!" Cal shouted, surprised to find there was voice in his throat again. The second Thunderhawk fired a short, surgical burst from a weapon with no paint and too much reputation. A meltabeam hissed past the dreadnought's shoulder and struck a hanging gantry over the Black Hulk's back. Old metal surrendered with relief. The gantry groaned, tore free, and fell like a slain serpent. Banner rolled. The gantry smashed the spot where his skull had been and clanged, sparking, across the floor between him and the sister. For 3 breaths, her field was a broken shoreline caught behind iron and hot air and a wash of ionized filth. The green inside Banner did not swell. It stepped through a crack. He inhaled and the breath didn't hurt. Blue roared back, not as a flood but as a blade, narrow and perfect. Veins lit, color of lightning on glacier, of a star seen through deep water. The chain in his hands went bright along engraving lines as if remembering the ore's first sun. He pulled. The dreadnought's claw sprang wide. Links parted like decisions. The chain went slack with a sound like rain. "Stop him," the Inquisitor said, pleasant still. The sister stepped into the gap, her silence like a hammer on a bell. Banner hit it like a wave meeting cliff. The blue shrieked. The green snarled. He did not break her. He did not go through. He went around, up and over, hands on a rusted pillar, muscle and will and 2 kinds of rage turning a clumsy vault into a leap that would have made a demonette reconsider choreography. He landed on the other side of the sister's shadow and ran. Not away. Not toward the PDF or the Habs. He ran for the open ribs of the manufactorum and the black mouth of the ash wastes beyond, where the sky's bruise had been and the wind still smelled like old industry and cheap lies. "Pursue," the Inquisitor said, and for the first time there was edge under the velvet. By any means. The chaplain went without waiting for permission. The sword brother with him, swearing with joy because chase is a kind of prayer. Ancient Vardek tore free of chain coils, systems cycling from contains to hunts, and thundered in their wake. Cal looked at Rill, at the recruit, at the dust line where a myth had just decided it would not be a specimen today, and made a small, stupid decision that would matter later. "Up," he told the recruit and clapped his shoulder. "We're moving." After that, the recruit asked, wild-eyed. "No," Cal said, and pointed to where the sister stood like a winter made of knives. Away from that. Above, Vox litanies unfroze. Across the planet, cogitators updated threat maps. In orbit, a Lance battery recalculated what surgical meant to 3 decimals. Somewhere far away, something in the warp pouted and smiled at once. The purge order did not end with fire. It ended with a horizon. The ash wastes opened like a promise no one sane would want kept. The Black Hulk's footprints punched craters in the powder, then shallowed as his stride smoothed, the blue and green finding a miserable truce in motion. The wind erased the worst of his trail like a collaborator. Behind him, angels and a coffin and a silence ran, and the Inquisitor sketched tidy circles in the air with a gloved finger as if marking where the lesson would be written in blood. Ahead, the desert lifted, not dunes, but dead manufactorums half buried like leviathans, wind harps of destroyed gantries singing tunelessly, a skeletal rail line marching nowhere. And beyond that, far to the west where the sky wore bruises like jewelry, something moved that the planet tried very hard not to notice. The hunt began. Chapter 5. The War on Desolation 9. Desolation 9 woke up angry. Sirens that had rusted into ornaments found their voices. Macro-hailers boomed catechisms that shook ash from girders. In hive-scrap warrens and silo cities, hab doors buckled under boot and order. The planet's defense cogitators flickered from starving bureaucracy to war machine, and a great tired beast rolled in its sleep and remembered war was the only art it had ever practiced well. Out on the wastes, the Black Hulk ran. He did not sprint. He didn't need to. He ate distance with a long, unshowy stride that made the ground think about its career. Blue lit his veins in long, even pulses now, the rhythm of the dreadnought's drum repurposed and made his. The green burned around the edges, stubborn and human. Behind him, the chaplain, sword brother, and ancient Vardek closed in as only Astartes could, inevitable as punctuation. Above, the Inquisitor's twin thunderhawks carved precise ellipses in the bruised sky. Vox nets laced from orbit to silo. The planet became a listening thing. Orders flowed like mercury. Regiments to Grid Vorn Delta through Kappa. Titan Legio warning order. Knights to screen. Armor wedge on the rail line. Air denial, tiers 2 through 4. By whose writ? An offended field marshal demanded across 3 channels. By mine, the Inquisitor said pleasantly, and a rosette shuts more doors than reason ever will. Cal Vorton felt his world stretch and find new pains. He had the recruit under one arm and Rill slung over a scraped, protesting shoulder. They shuffled between slag dunes while distant engines drew lines across the sky and nearer engines drew lines in the dust. Sergeant, the recruit rasped through the rebreather. We're running away. Correct, Cal said. This is wisdom disguised as movement. Are we abandoning the Astartes? We are leaving gods to argue with a bigger god, Cal said, and nearly smiled because honesty felt like heresy and that made it delicious. We will live and write the form about it. They crested a dune and slid down the other side in a gritty avalanche. Ahead, a rail spur cut the wastes like a scar, still straight despite the planet's best efforts to sag. Beyond it, the ground trembled. Something big was walking. Cal felt the vibration in his teeth and then in his bones. Not ours. The recruit asked, equal parts dread and hope. Ours, Cal said, and the word had more relief in it than pride. Saints keep us. Ours. It came over the horizon like the memory of a god that had learned to count. A warlord-class titan, Legio Iron Praxis, color scorched by 1,000 suns, strode out from behind a railhead carcass, its carapace guns turning on gyros with cathedral grace. Banners dragged the ash. Each one carried the names of worlds it had hurt until they behaved. On its flanks, 2 Reaver Titans trotted like hunting hounds built from factories and dogma. A banner of knight suits flared across their ankles, lances raised, chain blades purring. Designation Lex Ultima. A Vox cherub chirped somewhere, delighted to have a sentence worthy of its brass lungs. Princeps Hestia aboard. Machine Psalm Integrity 97. War Liturgy a hungry. The Black Hulk slowed. He hadn't seen this before. Tanks he knew. Gunships he learned fast. This was new. He put a hand on a fallen lifter gantry without looking and squeezed until iron remembered it could be straw. Target, the chaplain voxed crisp. The war priests I'm measuring not awe but angles. Stay low. Use the feet as cover. Don't gift it a lock. The sword brother laughed, a bright sound in all this black. You say that like it can hear us. Ancient Vardek thudded to a halt on a dune ridge and took one breath of stillness, a machine sigh. "We have woken the city," he said, and his voice had a tired pride in it only coffin men carry. "Do not be found wanting." The Titan's head swiveled, eye lenses narrowing like a hawk's. Banners snapped. Vox choirs aboard intoned the litany of exact anger. Princeps Hestia leaned into her amniotic throne, wires and prayers plugging into spine and soul until she was the machine and the machine was Hestia. She saw the anomalous heat not running toward her line. She saw the black angels hunting it. She saw the Inquisitor's sigil and did not like it but did not argue. War has too many voices to quarrel with every one. "Blessed be the engine," she breathed. "Gird wrath. Present war." The Lex Ultima's volcano cannon bowed like a noble. It spoke. The air where the Black Hulk had just been turned into a brief religion of light. He had moved when the barrel dipped. Reflex. It wasn't precognition. It was the same part of him that heard punches in air and smelled trouble before doors opened. The beam raked the wastes behind him, carving a scar that would confuse cartographers for a century. Heat rolled in a sheet, a hand that wanted to press him flat. He didn't dodge the follow-up. The carapace plasma annihilator disgorged a sun. The blast threw him end over end. He hit the rail line, snapped an iron spine, and kept sliding, gouging furrows with his heels. The blue under his skin flared to a blinding glare, took the sun, sobbed once and steadied. Princeps Hestia blinked into a dozen false color feeds as her Moderati chanted ranges. "Odd," she murmured. "The thing drinks. Not heat. Not force. Attention." Princeps, a tech priest chorused on her mind line, "Suggest alternating tempo. Starve it and starve it again." "Noted," Hestia replied, and her Titan, far less polite, rode forward to mash the world flat enough that the target had nowhere left to stand that wasn't under a gun. Knights fanned and charged. Chain blades took the air's measure. Lances tilted. One knight, Seraph, errant, proud, broke ahead, chevrons bright, vox cool. "I'll hamstring it." "Hold formation," a seneschal warned. Seraph did not hold. Errant's air. He came in at the Black Hulk's right, blade raised for a scything cut. The Black Hulk stepped into the angle, caught the chain blade above the quillins, and let it chew a trench across his forearm that smoked without bleeding. With his left he palmed the knight's helm, fingers denting ceramite, and shoved. The knight suit backpedaled. 50 tons of noble arrogance skating like a child on ice. It fell. The Black Hulk lifted the chain blade and smashed it into the helm, then thought better, twisted the wrists of the suit like a cruel brother and locked the blade into the ground so the knight couldn't get up without leaving a limb behind. "A laugh," the seneschal said quietly. "Still honored," came the breathless reply. "Pinned. Learn." The Black Hulk pivoted to meet the next two knights. He did not seem bigger. He felt heavier, not mass. Meaning. He rolled under a lance thrust, the tip scalding his shoulder, and uppercut a knee joint. The knight stumbled. The second overcommit and nearly clove its sibling. Both jolted back on mag clamps. "Gunline," the Inquisitor voxed. "Now." Basilisk siege guns that had been dragged into position with curses and hymns fired in a rolling crash. Shells fell like houses. The wastes fountained. The Black Hulk vanished into a hill of angry dirt. The chaplain used the moment without asking who authored it. "Advance," he shouted, and his voice came back. Not like before, not full, but enough. The Sister of Silence held back at the perimeter, widening her cold as far as she could push it without collapsing. In her null, the Muggoses Auspexes sulked. The Inquisitor played conductor with other people's blood. Ancient Vardek waded through blast winds and falling grit. He hit the mound with a contemptuous sweep of his claw, scraping it away in a sheet, and the Black Hulk lunged up from under like a shark through ice. He caught the dreadnought's arm and did not try to lift this time. He turned, using Vardek as a shield a heartbeat long, taking a basilisk shell on the dread sarcophagus with a clang like a funeral toll. Vardek swore without words and answered with a hammering fist. The blow would have jammed a Baneblade's turret. The Black Hulk's jaw hopped. Teeth the size of thumb bones clacked. He grinned bloodless and shoved the dreadnought away. Space for a breath, gaze already stalking higher prey. The Titan's foot came down. He braced and pushed. Even he couldn't throw a warlord's step off its decision, but he made it hesitate. The world shook with a note Hestia felt in the bones she'd abandoned to the amniotic throne. Interesting, she thought, and dropped the next foot with no warning or rhythm at all, randomizing her own stride like a dancer cheating time. The Black Hulk misread it by a breath. The edge of the foot kissed his shoulder, buried him to the ribs and ground. Bones rated for tanks snapped and healed as fast as the breaking. He roared, and the roar was smaller here, under the Titan's choir and the sisters' quiet. Tore himself free, flesh sloughing then knitting in a wet, beautiful logic that would have made a Muggos weep if they remembered how. Princeps, a moderatus breathed. It does not die. No, Hestia agreed as if discussing weather. But it can be tripped. She quartered her guns. Volcano, silence. Carapace plasma, silence. Gatling, a ragged walk of rounds to herd. She starved the Black Hulk of attention, fed him just enough to keep him oriented wrong, then overfed with a sudden lance that erased options. In her shadow, knights reformed, ashamed and angry, and cut not for glory but for joints. The chaplain and sword brother darted to Harry. Ants at a lion, perhaps, but ants with knives that had read the right prayers. The Black Hulk adapted. He stopped charging. He stopped swatting blows out of the air by instinct. He breathed. He counted. He stepped wrong when Hestia wanted him to step right, and when the volcano spoke he didn't jump. He let it weld a glass lake in front of him, then ran across it before it could crack. He caught a knight's lance mid-thrust and drove it deeper into the ground to use as a vault. He slapped a basilisk shell aside and watched it detonate where the gun crew weren't, because Cal had moved them 30 heartbeats before for a reason he couldn't explain. "Sergeant," the recruit gasped, hauling a box of charges that suddenly felt like a children's toy. "We step into a war and you start." "Conducting?" "I am making small decisions while big ones are being made," Cal said. He didn't mention that his hands wouldn't stop shaking. "Help me be right." A new noise arrived. The bark of drop pod retros. 10 became 20 became a rain. They slammed into the wastes in a tightening ring around the Titan's hunt, pedals blowing with hydraulic piety. Black Templars, Crusader squads, a Devastator detachment with missile racks like anger made orderly. An avalanche of brothers answering a cough across 1,000 channels. "Form cordon," a marshal voxed, voice like oiled stone. "No crossfire. Do not gift the Titan your bodies." Heard. "We pin it for the Princeps." The ring tightened. The Black Hulk found space scarce. He didn't mind. He did not love running. He loved pressure. He burst through a kill team, catching one Marine by the strap and hurling him into 2 more like angry luggage. He took a croc missile on the chest, fingers digging into the round and holding it there while it screamed against detonating. Then he threw it back up at the Devastator who had launched it, not in cruelty but in ugly courtesy. "Your turn." The Marine caught his own mistake with a practice twist. The missile screamed overhead and took a chunk out of a dune that already owed the universe too much. "Marshal," the chaplain voxed, breath hard. "Null on field." "It bends him." "He still adapts." "Then bend him more," the marshal said, entirely untroubled by novelty. "We have the tools." They brought them. Castellan pattern shields locked, creating a tunnel of force and faith. Breachers pushed in, a slow fist tightening. The sister moved with them, silence inflated to a cold dome at the line's heart. The Black Hulk's blue guttered thin. The green flared and held. He set his feet. Ancient Vardek understood posture. He synced to the Templars without orders, claw closing to pin, not to rend, letting the weight of 1,000 wars rest in his grip. "I have him," Vardek said, and he did. "For the blink of a world." The Inquisitor smiled behind the mouthless mask. "Stasis web," he sang, "because men repeat the last thing that nearly worked. All batteries. Double lattice. Bleed the cogitators if you must. I will buy you new spirits." Cables sang from the Thunderhawks. Hooks found purchase with a sound like hymns chewed by a machine. The lattice crawled over the Black Hulk's skin like law. "Hold," the chaplain said, and he wasn't sure if he spoke to the Marines, the Dreadnought, the Titan, or the man inside the monster. Banner heard him. In that awful, beautiful quiet under the sister's hand, he heard, "Enough. End it. Kneel. Before they bury you in numbers, choose." He bent. The lattice tightened, pleased. The dreadnought leaned in. Knights raised lances for the pin that would be mercy disguised as spear. The Titan lifted a foot like a mountain learning ballet. The rail line whined. Every head turned. Astartes, PDF, Inquisitor, Sister, Titan God. Men recognize new noises the way prey recognizes old shadows. Out on the horizon where the line vanished into a bruise of sky, lights winked to life along the dead spine. One by one, red to blue to a color that didn't have a name in Imperial lexicons because Imperial lexicons didn't like admitting the Warp War jewelry. Muggos, the Inquisitor said, soft for the first time. Incoming mass, the tech priest replied, each syllable shivering. Not ours. Warp penetration signature. Translation inside atmosphere. This is not permitted. By whom? The Inquisitor asked, perfectly reasonable in the way of men who have never been told no by physics. The rail terminus tore itself open like a memory of industry relapsing into birth. A gate flowered, petals of shadow, stamens of lightning, and slid off its hinges in reality. Out of it came shapes that did not so much move as arrive at speed. Skimmer barges like spines, walkers like spiders that had learned to enjoy cathedral architecture, infantry with antlers of metal and faces made of too much joy. Not Eldar. Not even the sleek cruelty from the manufactorum. These were uglier, gaudier, hungrier. Icons writhed on pennants as if trying to wriggle free of being impressed into service. A banner long as a lie trailed behind a figure riding a throne of welded wreckage. He laughed with a voice that felt like trespass in your ears. Children, the Chaos Lord crooned across vox and air and thought, choosing the tone that offends everyone. You found a toy and forgot to invite us. The sister's silence punched outward on instinct. It hit the leading wave and made half its demons forget their names and pop like soap bubbles. The rest giggled and came on. Princeps Hestia pivoted the Lex Ultima with elegant fury. Forward, she told her god. Knew him. The marshal's calm did not so much crack as sharpen. Templars. Wall. Ancient Vardek turned, claw releasing the Black Hulk not from mercy but from triage. The dreadnought's machine spirit growled in a tone that meant finally. The stasis web thrummed, unattended. Wires singing as the Thunderhawks shifted to make new math at the world. In the middle of the lattice, the Black Hulk breathed, and smiled a terrible little smile without joy. He did not love any of them. Not the men who had tried to cage him. Not the monsters who had come to take him. He loved a simple thing. The direction of his fists when the choices are fewer than 3. Banner, he said to himself. Pick a side. Bruce answered with a laugh that hurt to make. The one with the people we don't hate. Good enough. He put his hands on the lattice and tore. Blue flared like dawn under ice, bright and clean. Links snapped, not from brute force alone, but from a refusal that had learned a shape. He stepped out of the net like a man stepping out of a shirt he didn't like. The sister's silence pressed and pressed. He spared her a glance and a nod that had, somehow, thanks in it. Then he pivoted to face the oncoming riot under the bruised sky. Round 3, he said to no one and everyone. Cal Vorton, very small behind a very inadequate berm, found himself grinning like a fool. Sergeant, the recruit whispered. What now? Cal checked his charge count, his courage, and his leg that had started to bleed for reasons he didn't have time to inventory. He straightened his back because men like Cal knew posture is half of war. Now, he said, and pointed his loss gun at the ugliest thing he could see. We helped the side of the angels that came to save us by accident. The war on Desolation 9 began in earnest. Titans and knights and crusaders turned to meet the tide. The Inquisitor drew a symbol in the air with 2 fingers and an unkindness of skulls dove shrieking to stitch hexagrams where the front would break. The sister strode forward into the teeth of songs that were never written and made them shut up. Ancient Vardek lifted his claw and found something nominally immortal to insult. And the Black Hulk, blue-veined, green-eyed, all refusal, charged, not into the Imperium, not into the hunt behind him, but through the first wave of chaos with a joy that made the war piss and grin at once. Above, on the edge of space, the bruise in the sky yawned wider. Somewhere in its old dark, something noticed him the way a storm notices a mountain. It leaned, and the desert sang with fire. Chapter 6. The Eye of Chaos. The bruise in the sky did not widen like weather. It unfolded, a black flower with petals of lightning and a heart that was a hole. Inside it, colors argued about existing. The wind forgot which way to blow. Vox nets squealed with a choir of languages that had never met etiquette. On the ground, the line buckled and held. The first rush of the warband hit like a badly told joke. Noisy, overconfident, too many spikes. The Black Hulk crashed through it with plain contempt. He tore a banner from its pole and used the pole to introduce a pair of demonettes to the concept of a way. He shouldered into a hellbrute, and the sarcophagus screamed a hymn to a god that didn't bother listening as its armed torsos tried to strangle the sun. He ripped its Melta arm free and clubbed it with its own bad decisions. To his left, the Black Templars fought like a door held against a sea. The chaplain's Crozius rose and fell in a rhythm that made lesser men find their feet. The Sword Brother bullied a hulking berserker back step by step, teeth bared, blade a hard, honest argument in a world cluttered with lies. Ancient Vardek hit a Forge Fiend square and drove it onto its back in a shower of hot teeth. Princeps Hestia walked the Lex Ultima into the fight like a cathedral deciding to learn to dance. Carapace guns scissored. Volcano spoke. Plasma stitched lines of refusal across the oncoming tide. Her knights flanked, humbled by their earlier schooling, now cutting with precision and teamwork, blades taking knees, lances pinning monsters for the dreadnought's claw to end properly. The Inquisitor's voice coiled through the noise with the silk of habit. Hexagrammata on my marks. Net their leaders. I want words. The Sister of Silence strode forward as if the world had been made for her height. Where she went, demons popped, psychers choked on their own tricks, and the warp hissed like a cat that had mistaken a bath for a miracle. Her hand rose. No blade, no theatrics, and a sorcerer in peacock armor went slack, his staff dropping from fingers that had learned too late they were glorified sticks. Cal Vorton, small, stubborn, bleeding, found a shelf of broken rail, made it a firing step, and laid down loss with a will that had learned not to measure itself against gods. The recruit at his side fired too fast, then remembered to breathe, then fired as if each beam were a sentence he wanted to be proud of. Sergeant! The recruit yelled. That thing! He pointed at a spider-legged, shrine-encrusted engine skittering in from the flank. Track joints, Cal said. Don't admire it. They did not kill it. They made it slow. It mattered. For a time, the Imperium and an accident named Bruce Banner made a line, and the line made a statement, and the statement was no. The sky answered with yes. The bruise flowered into a wound. A ring of Lamia light stepped down from the clouds and pressed its heel into the desert, spinning a storm out of nothing. Marks burned through the gale. Wings and eyes and mouths, teeth and labyrinths, dangers as heraldry. Out of that ring stalked things that were not a warband. They were a plan. An armored spearhead no longer gaudy but cruel. Plate runed deep enough that prayer would have to shout to be heard through it. Obliterators like horrible choirs. A Lord Discordant riding a magnetized nightmare, its techno-demon muzzle snapping at reality like it smelled a treaty it could break. And at the center, casually like insult, a figure in Baroque Terminator plate chased in gold and wrought, cloak stitched from flayed banners, helm horns arcing like a crown that had met a forge instead of a jeweler. He rode a dais of welded wreckage, carried not a weapon but a staff with a lantern hung from it. The lantern was wrong. It was not light. It was attention bottled. He took his time to look at everything the way rich men look at a city from a balcony before throwing coins. His voice arrived as a private whisper to every ear. Little Storm, he said to the Black Hulk. Come home. The Black Hulk grinned like a broken nose. No, not a question. The lantern flared. The blue under the Hulk's skin writhed like a beast that had smelled meat. We called you and you came through your little hole with your old hunger. Let's tidy the paperwork. The Sister of Silence stepped, visor tilting. Her field swelled, winter licking at the edges of a fire. The lantern's glare faltered a hair. The Lord Discordant glanced at her as one might notice a weathered knife. He smiled with genuine pleasure. Ah, A silence. We wrote a song about you once. You did not like it. We do not mind being booed. Princeps, the chaplain voxed, no longer bothering with categories. Decapitation strike. Concur, Hestia breathed. Marshal. Make a hole, the marshal replied, and the ring of crusaders flexed. The Titan lowered its left carapace, presenting a shield of offense. A hail of Gatling and mass reactive turned a corridor of air into a wind of shrapnel. Knights surged in the lee. Templars followed. The sister a cold star at the spear point. Vardek thundered through the rent, claw raised to contest the math. The discordant cackled and launched a storm of data barbs that turned night machine spirits to vomit. Hestia bulkhead locked her will and sang harder. Drowning code imperable. Templars struck. Demons folded. The spear point closed and stalled. Because the lantern turned. It did not point at gun or chain or claw. It pointed at the part of the battlefield that made no sense to any cogitator. At a man who was a paradox wearing yesterday's shirt. Bruce Banner doubled over as if someone had dug fingers into the braid of him and pulled. Inside him, the blue became a chorus. Too many voices, all urgencies. The green answered with one syllable repeated. No. The pull was not physical. It was context. The lantern held up a frame and tried to make him fit. He remembered labs. He remembered cages. He remembered men with gentle voices and steady hands and goals. He remembered that terrible small second between deciding to kneel and being made to kneel. He remembered the sister's silence and how, for one breath, he could hear himself. He straightened. The lantern dimmed, then flared crooning. The Lord's smile thickened. Brave, he said. Unimaginative. Come, little storm. The I would love you. The bruise above wasn't the eye of terror itself. But it was a pupil, perhaps. A taste. It looked at him. The Black Hulk took a step forward into the pull and felt his feet drag like magnets meeting a better metal. Banner, he said without moving his mouth. I'm here. Pick. We're not a demon. Pick. We are not theirs. The answer came calm, not because fear had gone but because there was no time left for anything else. We're with the people who don't know how to be perfect and try anyway. He smiled without joy. Good. The lantern spat a filament of black light, a fishing line cast into his chest. The sister's field flared white with sheer refusal and blew it sideways. It grazed his ribs. Where it touched, the blue howled and loved it. The Black Hulk roared. It was not rage. It was revulsion made sound. He ran at the lantern. The discordant laughed aloud. Yes. The spear point reformed to escort him without planning to. Knights flanked and screened. Templars bit at ankles. The dreadnought struck high. Hestia walked the Titan forward 2 steps and then stopped. Intuition not made of numbers telling her the third step would be a mistake. She tilted, carapace guns printing a fence of hot metal that the Chaos Vanguard tried to be clever around and only sometimes managed. The ground flipped its own script. Sigils the size of hab blocks burned up out of the sand. Geometry that had run away from home and joined a death cult. Chains of rusted iron as big as leviathans snapped up, not to ensnare bodies but to wrap around definitions. The Lex Ultima's left knee convulsed as if a priest had slapped its hammer reflex. Hestia's breath fogged her own visor. A knight stumbled and kicked free with a prayer that was mostly swearing. A Templar vanished mid-lunge, reappeared mid-fall 2 meters left, and made a joke of it by killing the thing that thought it had him. The Black Hulk didn't bother with the sigils. He stepped through them like a dog through tall grass. The lantern's pull sharpened. The blue sang. The green swore. He reached for the dais and the Lord simply wasn't there in the simple way that made you hate magic. He was to the left, to the right, behind, consequences rearranged in neat columns. Sloppy, the Lord scolded and flicked the lantern. The air tilted. The Black Hulk pitched, corrected, caught his own balance because nothing in his life had ever been flat, and snapped a punch into the space where the lantern had been. He hit nothing and everything, and the shock ran up his arm and said, "Yes, this is mine." "Princeps," the Inquisitor voxed, voice like sugar stirred into poison. "Can you lance that?" "Negative," Hestia murmured. "Too much friend, too much foe. It moves like a lie." Muggos. I have a new tone, the tech priest said, delighted with their own bad ideas. Higher. Narrower. It will shear context itself. Do it. Recommend humans close their eyes. Do it. The coil sang. This was not a note. It was a needle. It found the narrow band where the lantern's reach overlapped the blue's hunger and skated it with surgical cruelty. Templars fell to their knees vomiting. Demons burst into disappointed glitter. The discordant steed shrieked binary blasphemies and bit its rider's leg. The lantern hiccuped. The Black Hulk moved inside the hiccup. His hand closed, not around the lantern, but around the wrist that held it. He squeezed. Gauntlet plates cracked like old fresco. The Lord's laugh faltered. The lantern guttered, then flared in panic, dumping attention like a panicked host spilling a drink to cover silence. The eye above leaned so hard the cloud sagged. The sister stepped in and laid her palm on the lantern's face. Nothing dramatic happened. Which was the drama? The flares died. The pull unhooked. The blue writhed, furious and starving both, and then, under her quiet, remembered itself. The green sat down, breath coming ragged. The Lord let go. The lantern hung in the air between them, suddenly very heavy. The sister did not pick it up. She simply kept being exactly what she was. A blade with no sound. The Lord discordant clicked his tongue. Impolite. Ancient Vardek hit him with the power claw. It was not a killing blow. He had cheated death too many times for one claw to be the teacher he learned from. But it was a lesson, and it sent him cartwheeling off his dais, armor shedding vainglory and sparks. Marshal, the chaplain barked, pouncing on the opening like a starving man grabbing bread. Press. They did. Templars poured through, not a wave but a tide with teeth. Knights lanced the obliterators before they could decide which gun to be. Hestia took the second step she had held, timing it to the sister's quiet, and thus did not offend whatever math had been laid underfoot. The warband cracked in the middle. Chaos doesn't retreat with dignity. It retreats with promises. Half the front went to air on engines that remembered oaths they had broken. The other half tried to break the world a little on the way out. The Lord Discordant blinked across space with a sorcerer's bad manners and landed on his dais, lanternless, helm tilted. He looked at the Black Hulk. The Black Hulk looked back, chest rising like a forge bellows. Another time, the Lord murmured, "Bring flowers." The dais slid backward into a tear like a door that hated hinges. The ring in the sky shuddered, sulked, and curled like a fist into a pocket. The field quieted in chunks, like a machine being wound down by tired hands. The last demon popped like a joke told late. The last knight sank a knee, hydraulic sighing. The last crusader crunched a cultist's teeth under boot and then had the decency to look bored about it. The sister let her hand fall from the dead lantern and stepped back from the space where the world had been too much. Cal Vorton sat down because his legs decided to be democratic and held a vote. The recruit laughed once and then hiccuped tears inside the rebreather. Rill finally passed out properly, the body's old mercy. Above, the Lex Ultima turned its head like a cathedral learning to look down at the pews. The Inquisitor made himself 3 inches taller at the Thunderhawk's lip. "Seize the artifact," he said. "Contain the anomaly. And someone find me a commendation parchment. I will need to invent names for what I am about to be credited for." The chaplain ignored him. He walked to the sister. They looked at one another, stately and spent. She inclined her head the barest fraction. He returned it, a soldier's thanks without the insult of words. Then the chaplain turned to the Black Hulk. "Man," he said, because he would not say beast, and because the sister stood near and reminded even Templars to be careful with names. "What is your will now?" The Black Hulk looked at his hands. They were his. They were not. They were black as night water with starlight trapped in veins. He opened and closed them. He looked at the dreadnought's claw, at the knights with their lances lowered not in threat but in habit, at the Titan whose giant head regarded him like a clock looking at a hammer. He looked at the sister. "Home," he said, and the word almost broke him, because it was nonsense and holy at once. "If there is a way that is not through that." He flicked his chin toward the sky's healed bruise. The sister did not speak. She lifted a hand and drew a small circle in the air, a flat, empty gesture. I don't know, but I can keep the noise down while you ask the right questions. The Inquisitor's mask turned like a knife on a platter. There is study. There is procedure. There is. The chaplain spoke over him with a thing rarer than faith. Courtesy sharpened into disobedience. There is a man who chose the right war when the wrong one wanted him. The Inquisitor's servoskulls ratcheted closer. Pet carrion eager for a meal. There is also jurisdiction. Princeps, the Marshal voxed, very calm, as if asking about tea. If I were to stand in front of the Inquisitor's small craft with my Titan, purely by incident of geometry, would that be an error? It would be a truth, Hestia replied, and stepped the Lex Ultima forward exactly 1 pace, casting a cathedral-length shadow over the gunship's nose. For a heartbeat, 10,000 tons of piety and 70 kilograms of insult weighed each other. The sister watched without interest. She had other wars to fight, and none of them were ego. The Inquisitor exhaled theatrically. Fine, he said, like a man who intends to write letters later. Then we move to containment through collaboration. Chaplain, you will coordinate. Marshal, your men will not waste shots or saints. Tech priest, catalog the lantern under my seal. And you, he pointed at the Black Hulk, because pointing makes bureaucrats feel like the world is a list. You will not run. The Black Hulk smiled like a cracked statue that had decided not to fall apart today. Try to make me. The Inquisitor's laugh was small and honest. We did. Keep doing it, Banner said inside, wry and raw. Because if we stop choosing, it will choose for us. The wind shifted. The bruise closed. The eyes lean withdrew, not angry, not pleased, promising. Somewhere far behind the wastes, Manufactoria rattled themselves back into silence. Sirens coughed, embarrassed, and fell quiet. The planet remembered bureaucracy. Cal Vorton got to his feet because formality told him God should not look down at him. He managed a salute because habit is proof the mind is still there. The recruit copied him, bad at it and very serious. The Sister of Silence walked a slow circle around the Black Hulk, testing the edge of her own quiet against his change. The blue in him pulsed once, annoyed, then respectful. The green breathed. Next, the chaplain said to no one in particular and everyone at once, we find the hole he fell through and nail it shut. The Muggos clicked with perverse delight. We will need nails of interesting size. Then we pray for interesting iron, the chaplain said, and looked to the horizon where rails vanished and bad ideas came from. And for a map. Above them all, unnoticed by polite instruments, a small ragged tear fluttered in the thinning cloud like a wounded moth. It watched the man with the black skin and the blue veins and the green eyes and thought mine. Then it remembered the sister and thought later instead. The eye had offered a name. The Black Hulk had not taken it. For now that was victory enough. The first shot turned the horizon to glass. The second caught him across the back. He stumbled, fell to one knee, caught himself with a hand that shattered the ground. Pain, old friend, came roaring back, not as punishment but as memory. Banner's human voice broke through the storm. Not this time. He slammed his fists together. The shockwave ripped the clouds apart. The Titan staggered backward. Knights reeled. The Inquisitor's gunship tumbled like a child's toy before righting itself. And above them, the bruise in the sky split. A vortex howled open, red and black and hungry. The eye had come for its prize. The choice. For a moment everything stopped. Even chaos watched to see what the man in black and blue would do. The Sister of Silence reached him first, her null field pressing against the warp's teeth. The air around them turned to frost. She placed her hand on his chest. The light under his skin flickered, fighting the void, blue against nothing. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. He nodded once. I get it. He turned toward the vortex. Banner. The chaplain roared through the vox. You'll die. Maybe, Banner said. But at least they won't get what they want. The dreadnought Vardek lumbered forward, claw extended. Warrior, there are other ends. Banner shook his head. I've died before. It never sticks. He looked up at the sky that wanted to eat him and smiled. Not bravely, but honestly. Let's see how hungry you really are. The fall. He ran again, straight into the storm. The wind peeled steel from the ground. Lightning folded itself into spirals. His feet left the earth, but still he climbed. One leap, another, as if the storm itself were stairs only he could see. He reached the edge where reality ended and jumped. The sky swallowed him whole. For an instant, the blue light flared so bright that everyone, Astartes, human and machine, saw it reflected in their armor. It wasn't rage. It wasn't pain. It was freedom. Then he was gone. The eye closed, slow and sated. The clouds sealed the wound with black stitches. Silence fell, real and final. The legend begins. No one spoke for a long time. When words returned, they came from the chaplain. He gave himself to stop the wound, he said quietly. Perhaps the emperor sent him after all. The inquisitor's mask tilted toward the sky. Or perhaps chaos has claimed a new god. The sister turned her head, the faintest movement as if to say no. Princeps Hestia's voice rolled over Vox, low and weary. Whatever he was, the eye is quiet. For now. Cal Vorton, watching from the dunes with the recruit beside him, whispered, "Do you think he's dead?" Rill, half-conscious but listening, answered hoarsely, "If he was, the planet would be quieter." They all looked up. The clouds drifted apart. For a heartbeat, a faint green glow flickered behind them, like a heartbeat that refused to stop. Then it was gone. Epilogue. The whisper in the warp. Far beyond the rim of the galaxy, inside the eye's endless storms, something stirred. A black figure, vast and luminous, knelt among the screaming tides of chaos. Around him, demons shrieked and tore themselves apart rather than approach. The blue veins under his skin burned like stars. The green fire in his eyes refused to dim. He opened his mouth, and the warp listened. "Not your god," he said. "Not your monster." He smiled into infinity, and the storms bent around him like wind around a mountain. "I am done being a weapon." And in that place where the laws of reality go to die, something new was born, a silence that scared even gods. The Black Hulk had fallen, but he had not been defeated. Chapter 7. The Fall of a God. Dawn tried to rise over Desolation 9, and failed. The sky was still red with everything it had seen. Smoke climbed in thick columns, carrying prayers, curses, and data alike. The air itself seemed exhausted, a tired lung that had breathed war too long. Across the broken plain, silence reigned where armies had clashed. The great Lex Ultima stood half-buried in a crater of glass, one knee bent in exhaustion, reactor hymns reduced to whispers. Knights lay scattered like fallen saints. Marines and mortals alike tended to the wounded, piling the unrecognizable dead into lines that pretended to be order. And at the heart of it all, he stood. The Black Hulk. Or perhaps what was left of him. The aftermath. Bruce Banner's chest rose and fell like a man dreaming of oceans. The blue under his skin had gone still, no longer screaming or devouring, just pulsing faintly as though marking time until the next disaster. Around him, Astartes moved carefully, not afraid, but respectful in the way soldiers respect minefields and miracles. The chaplain approached first, Crozius unlit, helm removed. His scarred face was grim but not unkind. "You stand among survivors," he said. "You are not one of us, but today you were what we needed." Bruce lifted his eyes. "That's not what I do," he said quietly. "I break things." "You broke the right ones," the chaplain said. "That is all war ever asks." Behind him, the Sister of Silence watched, an unmoving shadow. Her presence still pressed against the air, dulling thought and sharpening honesty. Banner's gaze drifted to her, and for a brief, almost human instant he smiled. "Thank you," he said, though she would never answer. "You kept me. The Inquisitor descended from his craft like bureaucracy given bones, robe stained with sanctified ash. Servoskulls buzzed around him, cataloging, measuring, dissecting reality one sigh at a time. "Containment successful," he announced, his tone falsely bright. The heretic host dispersed, The anomaly pacified, the artifact secured. A satisfactory outcome, given the liabilities involved. Liabilities. The chaplain's voice was gravel wrapped in reverence. That thing beside you saved your God's world. The Inquisitor's masked head turned. The Emperor's will is not executed through gratitude, chaplain. Only obedience. A flicker of rebellion. Banner turned away, fists curling. He wanted to shout to shake the dust and blood from his ears, but instead only said, "I didn't come here to serve your God. I don't even know why I'm here at all." "You were summoned," the Inquisitor said, studying him through lenses that glowed faintly red. "Warp resonance. Something pulled you across the void. Perhaps Chaos wanted you, perhaps the Emperor did. Perhaps the universe simply coughed and spat you here." Banner exhaled. "And now, said the Inquisitor, "we study you." The chaplain stepped forward, blocking the view. "No, you will not shackle him. You saw what he did to the warp spawn. He's not a demon. He's a man. My oath binds me to shield men." "He is not a man," the Inquisitor snapped. "He is a weapon that refuses command, a godling that doesn't kneel. Such things end the same way they always do, buried." Before the words finished leaving his mask, the ground beneath them groaned. The eye opens again. The bruise above Desolation 9, that terrible false star, pulsed once more. Not wide, not open, just watching. The eye of Chaos had not forgotten the thing that said no. Across the planet, dying warp echoes began to whisper. They spoke in languages made of hunger and guilt. They whispered one word: return. Banner felt it first, in his blood, in the silence between heartbeats. The blue light twitched under his skin, answering a call he had already refused. "No," he whispered. "Not again." The Inquisitor's skulls recorded the energy spike. "Contain him," he barked. Before it, he never finished. The Black Hulk was already moving, not to attack but to run toward the only thing louder than the voices, the horizon. The pursuit. He crashed through the ruins, through the skeletons of Manufactoria, through fire and faith. Each step left a crater. The blue veins brightened, fighting the red light in the sky like a heartbeat against infection. Behind him, the Lex Ultima stirred, reactor him rising from whisper to thunder. Princeps Hestia's voice rolled across Vox channels. Target vector locked. If he falls into the eye, he may drag us all. Contain. The Titan fired. Chapter 8. The Last Stand. The Eye of Chaos closed, but its echo never left. Across Desolation 9, the light dimmed and the sky, still bleeding at its edges, hung like an old wound that refused to scar. The battlefield had gone quiet. Titans stood motionless, their reactors humming low like monks in after prayer. Knights knelt in glassed craters, blades buried in ash. Even the wind had grown afraid of its own sound. And far below the horizon, where the last of the smoke sank into ruin, the warp whispered again. The return. It began as a tremor beneath the crust, a heartbeat trapped under miles of dead rock. The Inquisitor felt it first. His servoskulls froze mid-flight, optics flashing crimson. Vox frequencies spiked into impossible bands, broadcasting fragments of words no human tongue could have made. He is not gone. He has learned the quiet. He is coming back changed. The Sister of Silence stopped walking. Her gauntlet fingers curled, a shiver passing through her null field. Even silence could tremble when something tried to speak through it. A bolt of blue light erupted from the desert, streaking through the fog like a vein of lightning dragged out of the world's heart. It punched through the sky and split the clouds apart, sending shockwaves that flattened entire mountain ridges. Princeps Hestia, still wired into the Lex Ultima's command throne, felt her Titan kneel. Not because she commanded it, but because something greater brushed past its machine spirit. "Machine soul registers submission," she whispered. "To what?" No one answered. The light touched down again, and when it cleared, he was there. The Black Hulk returns. He stood in the crater of his own making, steam rising from his shoulders. His skin was darker now, almost mirror-black, swallowing light. The blue veins were gone. Instead, a lattice of faint green fire pulsed under his flesh, rhythmic, deliberate, alive but not wild. His eyes glowed faintly gold. Not the light of rage. The light of understanding. Bruce Banner was still there, buried deep beneath it all, but he wasn't fighting anymore. For the first time since the accident that made him, man and monster, looked like they were sharing the same breath. The chaplain approached slowly. Crozius lowered. "You fell into the eye," he said. "No one comes back from that." "I didn't," the Black Hulk said, voice a calm that frightened everyone more than his roar. "The eye came to me." He looked up at the bruised sky, where the faint shimmer of the warp still rippled like oil. "It wanted to teach me something. So I learned. Then I taught it back." Even the Inquisitor was silent. For once, words failed him. "The judgment. You shouldn't exist," the Inquisitor said finally. "No mortal thing should come back from the eye untouched. You're an abomination, no different than the heretic gods you fought." The Black Hulk turned to him. The gold in his eyes dimmed to green. "I was an abomination long before your gods started keeping score." He took a step forward. The ground cracked. "I didn't ask to be here. I didn't ask to be made. But I'm here now. And if this world stands, it's because I fought for it when no one else could." The Inquisitor drew his plasma pistol, shaking only a little. "You're a threat to the Imperium, to reality itself." The Sister of Silence stepped between them, wordless, faceless, final. The pistol lowered. The chaplain's voice carried through the comms. "He bled for us. He stood when even titans fell. The Emperor himself uses strange tools. Perhaps this one is his will." The Inquisitor's servoskulls twitched, feeding him endless data, all of it contradictory. Faith or logic, obedience or awe, he couldn't pick one that fit. "Very well," he said at last. "Then let the record show that the anomaly will not be destroyed. But it will be watched." "Good luck," Banner muttered. The dawn of silence. The sister reached out, her hand hovering just short of the Black Hulk's chest. The faint ripple of her null field touched him, and for the first time in her life, it didn't silence what it touched. Instead, the silence listened. Banner smiled faintly. "Guess we both changed." She inclined her head, the faintest bow, respect from a woman who bowed to no one. Overhead, the clouds began to part. A thin ribbon of morning broke through. True sunlight, not the firelight of war. The Lex Ultima stood tall again, reactor hum low and reverent. Knights powered down, kneeling in formation like titans at prayer. The war was over. For now. The eyes whisper. But the warp never forgets. Far above, in the silent void between reality and ruin, something vast stirred within the eye. Not anger, curiosity. For the first time, chaos had found something it could not fully claim or kill. A fragment of thought, old as creation, brushed the veil. The Black One is not ours. But neither is he theirs. He walks between. And the between is ours to tempt. The eye pulsed once, faint and patient. The last stand. At sunset, the chaplain found him alone, sitting atop a ruined pillar, looking at the dying horizon. "They'll never let you rest," the chaplain said quietly. "The Inquisition will hunt. Chaos will whisper. The Imperium will question." Banner didn't turn. "I've been hunted before. Difference is, now I can hit back." The chaplain smiled, rare and weary. "Then may the Emperor watch over you." "Keep him out of it," Banner said. "He's got enough blood on his hands already." The chaplain's laughter rumbled under the sound of wind and machines. "You speak heresy, Hulk." "Good," he said. "Somebody has to." He stood, looking toward the dark horizon where the eye had vanished. "Because next time it opens," he said, his voice steady as thunder, "I'll be waiting." He turned away from the dawn toward the wastes that still smoked and began to walk. Every step shook the ground, not as a threat, but as a promise. And high above, unseen by all but the stars, the eye flickered once more. Not in anger. In anticipation.